Welcome to the 1110 Leadership Podcast, where we tackle issues at the intersection of leadership, faith, and culture. I'm your host, Rob Shields, Vice President of Strategy at 1110 Leadership, and I'm joined by my co-host, founder and CEO of 1110 Leadership, David Spickard. Proverbs 1110 lays out a bold and countercultural vision. When the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. We're here to ask, what does it look like practically to be this type of leader? Leaders willing to invest everything they have so that everyone around them can thrive. Join us on the journey as we lean in, listen, and learn how to become Proverbs 11:10 kind of leaders. The kind of leaders that make our cities rejoice. David.
Hello, Rob.
Happy 50th episode
Yes.
of the 1110 Leadership Podcast. We made it. We're here.
We made it.
I don't know if we had this as a goal, but we made it.
Light the candle.
Right? It's lit. It's lit over here. It's going strong. Wow. This is a milestone. Hey, we talk about the importance of creating a culture of celebration with the companies that we coach. So we need to model that right now. And I'm excited. I'm excited about today's episode. This is it's a big milestone, to be able to hit 50 episodes. That's a lot of content.
It is a lot of content. I'm usually not a man of many words, and to think that we've done 50 episodes and we've had enough words to cover all of that time is quite astounding.
I think it speaks, not just how many words are in us, but even just how robust the topics are that we're diving into, because I think I say this phrase a lot. Our listeners may go back and be tired of the isms that keep coming up. Now, if they've been listening to all 50, they know our mannerisms pretty well. But there's just a lot of meat on these bones, when you think about really the unique space that we camp out on here at 1110, this triple Venn diagram of conversations at the intersection of faith, leadership, and culture. There's a lot there. And so I think 50 is really just the beginning in my mind. I don't come to 50 being like, what are we going to talk about now? We're running out of content. I actually think we're just starting to scratch the surface.
Yeah, it does feel like we're at the beginning point because it's a journey and we never arrive. And I think we're going to be continually talking about these topics. And it's a unique space for us to wrestle with. And we're just thankful for many of you who've been listening to be with us along this pathway, and to get to 50 is really fun.
Yeah, it is fun. So the way we're going to build this episode today, it's going to be a little bit unique with our 50th episode. So just to provide the lattice, if you will, for our listeners to be able to track our conversation, we're going to split this episode into two parts. Usually our episodes have a theme or a topic that we're drilling down on. We've done that. Our listeners are used to that. We're going to get back to that after this episode, and we're going to continue on that familiar journey. But with this being our 50th episode, we thought we'd mix it up a little bit and both give us a chance to reflect back on our first 50 episodes, kind of what some of the themes that stand out to us now that we're 50 episodes in, and do a little bit of reflection. But then also, we're coming up on summer, and we also just wanted to kind of share with our listeners the things that you and I are digesting on our own journeys, how we're growing personally. So does that sound like a plan?
Good plan.
Awesome. Let's go. I thought we could take a moment and reflect back on some of the stats of our podcast. Did you know that we have stats?
I actually do.
You're a sports guy. You're looking at box scores. Let's look at the 1110 Leadership Podcast box scores for a minute and be able to share some of those takeaways with our listeners. Are you ready for the top 5 most downloaded episodes?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to hit you with it in descending order. We'll start with number 5. So number 5, this was episode 18, Just Networks, Reframing the DEI Discussion. Number 4 was episode 4, Building Authentic Relationships at Work, which is a part of our Thrive series, the very first series that we did way back in July 2023. Number 3, this was when we profiled The Just Leader, your book, specifically on that 4th quality of a just leader, talking about bold and courageous action. Number 2 was a recent episode 43, Exploring Rest, Justice, and Leadership through the story of Zacchaeus. And then number 1, all the way back to episode 3, The Way We Work is Killing Us, which I'm sure there was some clickbait in that title and the way we worded that helped boost those statistics. But those are our top 5. David, as you look at the list, I know you've got even the longer list of the full top 10 in front of you as well. What stands out to you when you reflect back on maybe even specifically what causes those 5 episodes to rise to the top for people?
Yeah, I think one, it's interesting that they spanned time, that some are from the very beginning of our podcasts and others are toward the end and some are in the middle. So it's fun to see how they've hit at different times over the last year. Also think that there's a commonality among all of them related to what does it look like to be just, like the just piece of the way we think about leadership is something unique about the way that we're talking in our podcasts, and these topics certainly address those things, whether it's DEI or taking bold, courageous action as a just leader. And then the last takeaway is the focus on rest. The top 2 are all about rest
Burnout.
and burnout and pace, which coincides with what we experience in our coaching of leaders, and particularly executive leaders, CEOs, and the level of anxiety, stress that they're experiencing, and what does it look like for us to be people who rest. So, that's why we keep coming back to it over and over again in many of the episode topics that we've had.
Yeah, we refer to rest in our groups as quality 0. And so it is really interesting that it's that important, and that's backed up with the statistics on what has really hit with our listeners most. Those top 2 really relating to our need for rest, and it is something that I think is clearly a perceived need for leaders who are following along with us on this journey. David, when you reflect a bit on, we're 50 episodes in, do you have episodes or a single episode that kind of really rise to the top for you that's either on this list or not on this list?
Yeah, the one I like, well, I like them a lot.
You always do this. You never pick favorites.
Well, I've got the list of the top 10 that's in front of me, and number 7 is the one that really sticks out to me. It's episode 36, The 4 Ways to Become a Super Communicator or Super Communicator.
Yes, Arnold.
Like we talked about with Arnold and the State Farm commercial. I just love this one, and I talked about it during the episode, how one, communication is so important in the context of leadership, and most of us think that we have to be a dynamic communicator that inspires people in order for people to get the job done, for us to reach our mission and vision. And this whole article that we unpack in this episode describes how being a super communicator is really about listening and asking great questions. And, that can be surprising for some to hear, but it's also a skill that we need to develop. And I find in our work with people and leaders that developing the muscles around that and the mindset of what it looks like to really listen and pay attention to our people is something that we have to really focus on and develop a posture toward. And that's what allows us to be a super communicator. That's one that really stands out. I also loved number 2, the one on exploring rest, justice, and leadership through the story of Zacchaeus. In fact, I ended up listening to that podcast as I was taking a run, and I had to stop because it just hit me. And I ended up sending it out to a bunch of friends because I felt like it was not only helpful for me, I thought it'd be helpful for them. And so that one certainly stands out to me as well.
Yeah, I think each of the episodes that we've done and the topics we've discussed, there's no fluff. I don't think there's any episode I'm like, but it is interesting in reflecting back on what seems to really hit with people most. Okay, so switching gears to part two, David, would love to hear what you're digesting these days. I thought we'd break this up into three different parts. Give our listeners what you're reading, what you're watching, and what you're listening to these days.
Yeah, so I'm reading 2 books right now. Actually, that's new for me. Usually I just do 1 book at a time, but I got 2 going right now. One is called 24, which is a biography on Willie Mays, the great baseball player, and his life and career. And then I'm also reading a fiction book called Jayber Crow by Wendell Berry. And normally I don't read fiction. This is probably the first fiction book I've read in a long, long time. So many friends have recommended Jayber Crow to me. It's about a barber in rural Kentucky in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, which is fascinating.
Well,
So that's what I'm reading right now. It helps me go to sleep. I read before I go to bed. In terms of watching, we just got finished watching The Voice. We love The Voice. Of course, I'm watching the NBA playoffs and the College World Series because our team, UNC, made it to Omaha.
Go Heels.
And our rival did as well, NC State.
Oh, we'll see how that plays out.
We'll see how that plays out. They could meet in the final.
Whoa.
And then when I'm listening to, I listen to our podcast. And I often forget what we say. So it's fun for me to listen to it because I feel like I'm a true listener. I'm wondering what we're going to say next. I also listen to The Steam Room, which is another podcast. It's by Charles Barkley and Ernie Johnson from Inside the NBA. They have really fun guests on, and I enjoy listening to The Steam Room. And then most recently, I've been listening to the music of Niall Horan because we just went to see him in concert, and my wife Alice and I started to enjoy Niall because of his role as a judge on The Voice.
Love it. That's great. That's great. What a great list.
Pretty profound list.
You're covering a lot of bases. Yeah, there's so many different genres represented in that list. I love it. It's great. You're well-rounded.
All right. How about you? What are you reading, watching, and listening to?
Yeah. Let's see. I think my list is also pretty eclectic. Right now, I'm rereading the biography, Eugene Peterson, A Burning in My Bones, Win Collier. That was a pretty profound read for me. I'm a big fan of Eugene Peterson and his writings. And so being able to hear the story of his life has been really, it's good. I love biographies. And so when I can read the biographies of people who I have a lot of respect for, and just how they viewed the world and kind of illuminates some of what they wrote from behind the scenes. It's pretty neat to see how they were formed. That might be the psychology major in me. I'm currently watching, like you, the College World Series. My son, we've talked about him on the podcast. He holds me accountable to making sure I am locked in on all the sports updates. So he's got that Alexa in his room, and he asks her every morning for the sports scores. So he's coming down with those updates as he's eating his bowl of cereal for me. And then what I'm listening to recently, I listened to a podcast by the Trinity Forum called Towards a Better Christian Politics. This was a panel discussion they did with Curtis Chang, David French, and Russell Moore. I thought it was just a really thoughtful conversation looking ahead to kind of what will be probably another divisive political season this fall. Feels like that was a really proactive move to be able to start to kind of plant some seeds of how does it look like for us as believers to occupy that type of space. I know that was really challenging the last time around. And so I just really appreciated that resources out in the world. And I think they're even highlighting having small group resources that they're trying to put out for people who are looking for more. So I would highly recommend that. Can drop that in the show notes. And then another one that I'm listening to, I guess I haven't begun. All I've heard is the trailer so far, but I'm a big fan of the Scene on Radio podcast. They do a lot of thoughtful work. And so they have their 7th season is going to be on capitalism. And so even just hearing the trailer, I think the full season starts to come out later this month. I think it seems like it's going to be a really fascinating deep dive on the history of capitalism, but then also just how that intersects with some of the topics and issues we talk about here at 1110 around how to engage culture. What does it look like to be just in our various spheres. So I think obviously when we think about how money works, how the economy works, that's going to be clearly at the heart of a lot of those conversations. So excited to put my learning cap on this summer for that one.
Wow, that's great.
So David, typically we have a bottom line to land the plane on each of our episodes. I'd like to have a little bit of a unique prompt for our bottom line this time around for episode 50. Could you share with our listeners what helps you on your own journey really gain perspective for the work that we do?
That's a good question. I think, as we want to have resources and digest content that is helpful for the space that we're in, it's important that we, engage with them in such a way that we're growing as leaders, we're growing in our faith, we're growing in what it means to be just. We interact with a bunch of content when we're leading our groups and helping them identify places where they can grow in each of those three areas. There's some things that really stand out, some resources that really stand out to me that's been really helpful in my own journey as we lead others along these lines. Generous Justice by Tim Keller has been incredibly helpful for us to have a deep biblical understanding of justice. And that article we mentioned already that he wrote, A Biblical Critique of Secular Justice and Critical Theory, has been really helpful for us to engage with that. I've mentioned Kingdom Calling, a book that Dr. Amy Sherman wrote about 10 years ago that really, honestly, animated and inspired me around this verse, Proverbs 11:10, when the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. And I heard about that first from her book, Kingdom Calling. And she has just, in that book, created a real perspective of how we live out our faith, particularly as leaders and business leaders and companies, around what it looks like for our cities to rejoice. And then for me, I'm also a biography person. I like reading the stories of people who've gone before us and learning from them, or just to understand history and the ways things have been shaped over time and how things are now the way they are because of those things that happened in history. A couple of books that I read recently that were really profound to me. One was My Friend Anne Frank. That was a recent memoir that was written by Hannah Pick Kostler in her 80s, right before she died. She finally wrote a memoir of her best friend, her next door neighbor, Anne Frank, and the story of Anne Frank and her family disappearing, and then their own experience of being in concentration camps. My boys and I went to Amsterdam a year ago, and we toured the home of Anne Frank, and just having that come alive and understanding the injustices of the Holocaust and what that has meant in history and how people have then faced those atrocities, and then what that means for us in our own context is really important for us to wrestle with. Also just recently finished a book called The Wilmington Lie, which is about Wilmington, North Carolina, a city on our coast of North Carolina that used to be the largest city of North Carolina. And it had, in the late 1800s, just a unique leadership of mixed race people, was a vibrant city. But the book talks about how the white supremacist leaders overthrew the government and created just horrific race riots that changed the face of Wilmington and had implications in our state, and particularly from people here in Raleigh, where we live, that are just really important for us to know. So things like that are resources that go along with the other things that we've identified that, they need to be translated to our context of business and leadership and faith and culture and all of that, but certainly shape the way we see ourselves and see the people around us.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think, as your list shows, these resources are the things that really we lean on to inform our work. It's a unique and nuanced list that doesn't really shape onto a neat, clean category on kind of Amazon ranking list. So I think it's important when you find resources like that, or people who are thinking deeply about these matters, you stick with them. For me, I think I'd add Andy Crouch to that list. I think anytime I can hear from him, either the books that he's written, articles, or even short videos or podcast interviews he put out. Most recently, there's one I can drop in the show notes. I was an interview with him and John Mark Comer talking about the rule of life that they've put out. Andy Crouch works for Praxis. And so kind of him unpacking the importance of having some intentional habits and some structure around how we spend our time, and some limits and some accountability for that in ways that don't really feel legalistic or oppressive, but really are truly life-giving, was really a fascinating listen. And so I can drop that into the show notes for folks who'd be interested in hearing more of what he's done. But I also agree with you. Biographies and history are huge. I'm currently reading a book, Eric Larson's latest book, Demons of Unrest, talking about the formation of the Confederacy. And I'm listening to it on Audible, which is really fascinating. It feels like I can retain some of the history a little bit more than in written form, but that's been a really interesting read for me to be able to understand more of that history, how it touches on even my own history of North Carolina. So much of that is rooted right here where we do our work. And then another resource I've found helpful was a Netflix documentary called Descendant. And I'd put this in a similar category of how impactful it is from Brian Stevenson's TED Talk, talking about needing to talk about injustice. It's really helpful for me to have stories that help illuminate that kind of injustice. And so this tracks the story of the last slave ship to cross into U.S. soil, called the Clotilda, and the process of discovering that slave ship when it was scuttled in Alabama, and then being able to reconcile with the people who can tie their family history to that ship, and how that community really reckons with that history. So not too dissimilar from what you're describing with Wilmington, just down the way from us here in Raleigh. So yeah, there's a lot on there. That list is kind of evergreen and also ever growing, I think, for both of us. But hopefully there's some stuff in there. We can drop a lot of these resources in our show notes for folks who want to maybe spend some of their summer just really intentionally trying to continue on this journey of sight and learning and seeing. Okay, so David, as we look ahead for the 1110 Leadership Podcast, for our listeners, just a quick announcement of what you can expect for the future. We are going to be leaning in. We talked about quality zero and the importance of rest. So we are going to actually take a little bit of a break for the month of July to practice what we preach here at 1110. We won't be recording and putting out new episodes for that month, but we will resume back in August as we continue to get back on our regularly scheduled program and moving through the 4 qualities of a just leader. Now that we've wrapped up the first quality of seeing the whole playing field, we will move into building cultural competency. And so that is what will be ahead for August, and we'll continue to work through each of those qualities for the foreseeable future. So really excited about the content that we're going to be able to put out for you. And hopefully, as we think about the growth for the next 50 episodes of the podcast, we'll be able to see more interviews, have some more guests on, like we have started to pepper in, even most recently with Ken and Beverly Jenkins. That was a powerful conversation, hearing what they're doing in Ferguson, and would love to hear from you, our listeners. So if you've got ideas for topics, questions, or comments on the episodes, we would encourage you, please reach out to us at info@1110leadership.com. That's info at the numbers 11ten leadership.com. David, any final predictions on where we will be by the time we celebrate episode 100?
I think we're going to be in the same place. We're going to have a candle lit. We're going to be unpacking these issues and realizing there's more to go. There's more depth.
Yeah.
There's more insight. There's more people and, examples and things that will continue to inspire us to be the leaders that God has designed us to be.
Well said. Well said. Well, I'm going to go stock up on my candles because I don't think the one I'm currently burning is going to last for 50 more episodes, but I'm looking forward to that. I think that is exactly where I hope we will be, continuing to drill down even deeper in the exact same place. So well said, my friend.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. Till next time. To learn more about 1110 Leadership, visit our website at 1110leadership.com. That's the numerals 11, then spelled out TEN leadership.com. That's 11 TEN leadership.com. There you'll find more resources to equip you on the journey of becoming an 1110 leader. You can also get connected to our growing leadership network. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. To help others find us, you can also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.